everyone. This is a special episode on the channel to talk about a song that was written by Kamran Pasha, screenwriter, director, showrunner. He's just
Yeah.
done a
These
whole
few
bunch of
things.
really incredible things in the film industry, which we are really like as extreme nerds about. And we are also really incredibly interested in Cameron's new project that he's working on, which is a movie, or you've written a screenplay about Marilyn Monroe. Along with this incredible project that you're working on, is a song that we're going to be talking about as well today, written by you, Cameron, and also sung and composed by Maria. And how do you pronounce your last name for me?
Shinzai.
Shinzai.
Very
So
Japanese
Maria's in
sounding
it.
name.
I
Very
know it's
Japanese
it's
sounding.
wonderful. Uh, Maria
It is
Shinzai.
Japanese.
Wait, it is Japanese. Okay, so
Oh,
there's a history
It
there that
means,
I've never asked about. We don't have to ask about it, but yeah.
it means heartwood.
yeah. Okay, so Maria Shinzai is a wonderful song. And Cameron, can you tell us a little bit about the movie first,
Sure.
and then we're
Sure.
going to get into the song.
Sure. Okay. And so it's a project that's very dear and near to me. It's a screenplay that I wrote that I intend to direct, and I'm praying to get to direct it this year because of the reasons I'll talk about. But the script is called Goodbye, Norma Jean, and it is a feature movie film that is a movie about Marilyn Monroe, the great iconic character Marilyn Monroe. And there's been a lot of movies and miniseries and books and everything done about her, but almost none of them tell the story that is in my film. And for the reasons that I'm making the movie is because the story, challenges the narrative that Hollywood has created around her over the last 80 years and exposes a lot of the ways Hollywood hurt her in her life, right? And put her in
Mm-hmm.
impossible situations to make choices that benefited Hollywood, didn't necessarily benefit her. And the central story, the story is set mostly in 1942 to 1946. So and the reason it's called Goodbye Norma Jean is that was her birth name. And she was born Norma Jean Mortensen. And it's set during the period when she actually had her first marriage, which most of her fans don't even know about. Her first marriage to a gentleman named James Dougherty, who was literally the boy next door. He was literally the boy next door. He lived in the house next to hers, or the foster home she was living in here in Van Nuys, California, right? And she was living. Her mother was mentally ill. Her father had abandoned her before she was even born. Abandoned the mother. Okay, sure. So she was born Norma Jean Mortensen, and her father had sadly abandoned her mother when he found out she was pregnant, and so she was born out of wedlock, which in 1926 was really, really difficult for any woman to be a single woman.
Yes.
It's difficult today, but 1926 and the social shame of that. And so the mother had born, and then her mother was also very deeply emotionally, unfortunately, disturbed. And so right upon birth, she was put into a foster home because her mother was in and out of mental hospitals for her entire life. And so she spent from her birth moment to age 16 in series of foster homes and orphanages while her mother was in a mental hospital. So you can, this very traumatic, it's very extreme upbringing that is really damaging to any human being's soul. And so she was in a foster family in Van Nuys, California, at the age of 16, when the family had to leave California to get work in another state, in Virginia, I believe, or West Virginia. And legally, they couldn't take her with her because she was a ward of the state, and she wasn't legally considered an adult until 18. But she would be if she got married. And so she had been kind of dating the boy next door. This gentleman you see in the photo is a very handsome young man named he was a very good moral guy. He had actually had a chance to go to college. He turned it down because his parents were broke, and he took a job in a factory just to take care of them. So he was already a guy who would sacrifice for the people he loved. That was just who he was. And so her foster parents and his parents said, you like Norma, she likes you. Maybe you guys should just get married, and that way she's out of the foster system, and then she's legally an adult when she's married to you, and she's finally has a home. And they knew he's a good, decent guy. He ain't gonna beat her. He's not gonna mistreat her. He's a guy who's already sacrificed his own education to just preserve his family, right? He's gonna dedicate the family. And so they did. They got married, and they were married for 4 years. And it is the only period in the life of the woman that we call Marilyn Monroe that was stable. Her first 16 years, incredibly unstable. Every few months, new foster home or an orphanage. Can you even imagine that? Literally your whole life, every 5 or 6 months, you're moving to another family. And often she was a pretty girl. There was untoward things happening when there was no one to
Yeah.
watch, the
Yeah.
men in the house, right? It's unfortunate. And then from 20 to 36, she became Marilyn Monroe and became the biggest movie star in the world, and then died tragically and very sadly at the age of 36. But there was this, and we remember her as this very tragic figure. There's that song, which the title of my movie is inspired by the Elton John song "Candle in the Wind," because it starts
Oh,
off with "Goodbye Norma Jean," right? It
yes.
starts off with that. And
Yes.
these are wonderful photos that are taken from her early modeling career when she's still married to Jimmy, or just recently ended the marriage. But the whole point of that song is the myth that has sustained, that she was a candle in the wind, never knowing who to turn to when the rain set in. We're going to be talking about a song today. So the power of songs to create narrative and myth, right? So that's the narrative, that this poor woman was never out of the storm, and that she just didn't know who to cling to until one day the wind blew her out, tragically, right? And there is truth to that, but not real truth, because it very conveniently removes the 4 years of her life where she wasn't a candle in the wind, where she was with Jimmy, a decent guy who's taking care of her, not beating her, not exploiting her, wants to raise family with her, wants her to go back to school. She dropped out of high school. He has her best interest at heart, as he imagined he did, right? And he loved her for who she was. He didn't know Marilyn Monroe. He just knew this pretty sweet girl who liked poetry, who loved children, who had stuffed animals, and was kind, and that was the person he knew. And he didn't. As he would later say in life, he never knew Marilyn Monroe, so he can't give any insight into her. He knew this was Norma Jean. He said, and Marilyn Monroe was a very, very different person. As he would later, after the marriage ended, he would follow her in the news and read about her in biographies, and wasn't the woman he knew. Couldn't even imagine it. It was a completely different person. But the person he knew was, in many ways, the kind, gentle, sweet woman that we as fans remember, right?
Yeah.
And the woman that became Marilyn Monroe was a very tumultuous character, thrown into a horrible situation in Hollywood. But unlike her childhood, she tried to take power in that situation. And to do that, she had to become ruthless and at times cruel and domineering and all those things in order to fight back a system that was exploiting her, that she willingly went into. And that's the point of the movie, is that the movie shows how when he went away to war in World War II, she was discovered working in a factory in Van Nuys. She was working on drones. You can imagine, she was working in the first drone factory in the U.S., and she was working on military drones for World War II. And an army photographer took some photos of her on the line and said, there's something magical about this young woman who's not like anyone else, who's working on this factory. And he sent some photos to a modeling agent who decided to represent her. And then overnight, she became an instant national success. She became American because she just had a remarkable, the camera loved her. And Jimmy found out that she was modeling while he was overseas. He was in the war, and he was in the Merchant Marine, and he literally found out by all the men in the boat were like looking at a beautiful girl on the magazine, the cover of that magazine. I said, that's my wife. He's like, yeah, sure, Jimmy. Yeah, Darty, that's your wife. I said, that's my wife. Remember, they don't have email in 1946. He doesn't know what's going on. So he writes her a letter, which takes like a month to get to her, saying, hey, honey, what's happening? And she's like, oh, I got these modeling opportunities. He's like, all right, that's cool. He didn't stop it. He's like, all right, no, that's good. He was very proud to have a beautiful wife that the other sailors were fantasizing about. He loved that, right? But he thought, I'm gonna come back from the war, and we're gonna do what our plan was. And we know that's her plan because we actually have a letter she wrote to Jimmy, actually a letter that she wrote to her, to one of her foster mothers, where she just literally 2 weeks before she was discovered. We have this letter that she wrote to her foster mother saying how much she loved Jimmy, how she was waiting for the war to end. She wanted to have babies with him, wanted to have a family. That's all she wanted. We have that letter. Then 2 weeks later, she's discovered and instantly becomes a national celebrity, right? Overnight. And so by the time, Jimmy comes back, his wife is already a national celebrity. Yeah. And Hollywood comes calling, and they're very straightforward. They're like, you got to get rid of this guy. He's a problem, right? If you want to make it in Hollywood, you're 20 years old, you're beautiful. Yeah. We kind of need you to be available. Available for, various activities like the casting.
Yes.
We need you available for producers who have interest in you. And this guy is a strapping merchant marine who's a boxing champion in the service, right? And he's like, he's not going to let her go off and be 4 a.m. with some producer at his house. He's not going to let that happen. And that's a problem for Hollywood because they immediately commoditized her as someone that they're going to use for, frankly, prostitution. I mean, that's how Hollywood worked. That's still how Hollywood works. It was just more straightforward about it then, right? And so they gave her an option which said, Again, they couldn't legally do it. There's no contract that says she has to. But they said, look, if you want to be an actress, you got to get rid of it. And Fox gave her an offer. If you want to sign this, the understanding is you got to divorce this guy.
Yeah.
And tragically, the way she handled it, because she was young and, and also was getting really, really bad advice from the people around her. Like the modeling agent wanted her to do it. The modeling agent was literally running a prostitution ring, right? And so she was a madam of prostitution ring. She wanted Norma Jean available for her purposes, right? So she's like, oh, honey, you have to. This Jimmy guy's going to hold you back. You got to get rid of him. So everyone was giving her this advice. Remember, she has no parents. She has no family. She doesn't even have any friends because all the women were jealous of her. She's so pretty. So she's alone with all these nasty people telling her, get rid of this guy. You don't need him. And the truth is, she could have been married and been an actress. Jimmy wasn't like he's portrayed often in falsely by many fans because they can't understand what happened. So they have to imagine that he must have been an obstacle to her career. No, he was like, no, honey, I'll support you. He took her to acting auditions. He drove her to them. But he's like, we're still going to get married and have kids. We're going to balance it, right? That's what he thought he was signed up for, right? And he thought he was going to have the marriage that, Dolly Parton would have. Dolly Parton ended up was with a nice, normal guy you never heard about. But she had a family with him. You never saw him in the news. And she had her glamorous life, and she came home to stability. That's what he thought he was offering. And I think that's what she needed, personally. But Hollywood didn't want that. And they gave her this ultimatum. And so they said, you have no choice. Give us a decision by tomorrow. And so she sends him divorce papers without any warning while he's overseas. He doesn't even see it coming. He has no warning. He doesn't have any idea it's coming. So he's heartbroken. But he loves her enough to let her go. He's like, if you don't want to be with me, I'm not going to stop you. But he tells her, this is going to kill you, baby. These people, they don't love you. This is going to kill you. And sadly, he's the only one in her entire life that said, maybe Hollywood isn't good for you. Maybe you need someone to take care of you or protect you amongst all these wolves. Nobody else said it. And when he's out, there was no one else saying it.
Yeah.
And she quickly became, well, not quickly. It took her 6 years to become Marilyn Monroe. I mean, she was given the name Marilyn Monroe as part of that Fox deal where she had to divorce her husband. That was a new name that was given to her because Norma Jean Dougherty was just not a movie star name, right? But she struggled for 6 years before she became the Marilyn Monroe that we know in these photos. And these photos are taken at when she finally broke through in 1952, 1953. So that's 6.5 years. But she spent 6 years sadly being exploited on the casting couch. Her major breaks came from what? She decided the only way she could make it was, she started sleeping with her agent. She was the mistress of her agent, right? And she lived with him, broke up his marriage. Again, these were things Jim couldn't understand because that's not the sweet girl he knew that would go in and break up somebody's marriage to advance her career. But Hollywood's like, these are the only options you've got if you want to move it. And so the tragedy is the very person that many fans love is the person that Jimmy knew. But then that person was, really derailed in her life by Hollywood. And I don't think she had to sacrifice being an actress or being married to him. I don't think he was binary, but that was what was presented to her. And that's what history presents. And the unfairness is that his history now looks back at him very poorly because they have to justify her decision to leave him because either she was a bad person for leaving him and she can't be because she's an icon, or he's a bad person in some way that made her leave him. And most fans will prefer the latter. And it can't be the third option that there was Hollywood manipulation. That's not a possibility. Hollywood's not going to let that narrative out, right? And so my movie is meant to address the tragedy of the relationship. It's meant to address the good person that was Norma Jean that was erased by history. And this is something that I said. I was actually invited to speak at her memorial at her gravesite this year. And I actually did it last year as well. And I spoke and I said, so one of the tragedies we have, which is going to lead us into a little bit of what we're going to talk about in the song. But one of the tragedies we have about this woman that is such an icon, 80 years later, she's still, you go to Czech Republic in some little cafe, there's images of her, right? This is a global icon 80 years later. Whereas most people today, well, Clark Gable, I don't know who he is, right? But she remains an icon for a reason. But the tragedy is, and I said this at her memorial, which I think made some people uncomfortable. I said, most people today, she probably has over 1 billion fans today.
Oh, yeah.
1 billion fans today, easily, right? But I don't think she has any friends. Very few. Handful, maybe. Because a friend is someone who's honest, who sees the other person as they are, sees their strengths, sees their weaknesses, gives them advice, tells them what they don't want to hear, right? And still loves them despite their flaws. Whereas most fans, they iconize her. She is one of two things. She is either a perpetual victim who had no agency in her life, right? Or she is a goddess who dominated and controlled everything. Neither of these is true. And the third is she's a saint, where she never hurt anybody and everyone just hurt her. That's not true, because that's not human. She was a very kind and compassionate person. But yeah, I mean, the people that knew her well as Marilyn, a lot of them didn't like her. As Jimmy later said, he said everyone loved Norma Jean. People didn't really like Marilyn because the person she had to be to survive had to be selfish, had to be, angry at times, had to be quick to jump out of relationships and not make them work, right? And quick to choose like men that fit her image, like this man, Joe DiMaggio, who fit her image as an iconic man. But he, what was he? He beat her so badly that it took hours for her makeup artist to cover the wounds from her. And then she would go on to marry Arthur Miller, because the great intellectual playwright who emotionally abused her. And fans will iconize those relationships because they're famous, right? And so it's fairy tale romance. Movie star with the biggest baseball icon. Movie star with the biggest playwright icon. Movie star with a normal guy in the Merchant Marine who would go on to become a police officer. Doesn't work for a mythology. So poor Jimmy would be erased from history. And then literally just even last week, I said something nice about Jim Dougherty on a Marilyn Monroe post on Instagram. And I was flooded with comments calling him things that aren't true. Women, particular women, but men as well. The women, they were saying, "Oh, he was an abuser." Who I was like, Jimmy never abused her. No historian believes that. She never said it, even in her own sort of heavily edited autobiography, My Story. She says, I never felt unsafe in my first marriage. Right? She said it.
Interesting.
Never heard her. But that's literally the narrative as of yesterday when I'm arguing with somebody on Instagram. Was like, she never loved him. He never loved her. He abused her. He held her back. Literally, these are everybody else in her life except him. But they can't see that, because for her to leave a man like that makes them go, well, I can't like her though. But that means you're not her friend. Yeah. How many of us have friends who we see in relationships where we're like, maybe you should stick with that person, and they don't? Do we stop loving them?
Yeah.
Do we stop loving them? If they're friends? People go in and out of relationships for reasons that have to do with themselves. Do we stop loving them? But in her case, they do. So they have to erase him, which to me is so profoundly offensive as a human being, right? To see a good man. He ended up becoming not just a police officer, he ended up becoming a national hero. He founded the first ever SWAT team in history. He saved many people's lives. The actor James Garner from the Rockford Files, remember him, right?
Yes,
James Garner. Jim Dougherty saved James Garner's life from a kidnapping.
Okay, well.
He saved James Garner from kidnapping and death. And he worked with children. I actually went to San Francisco. There's an elementary school named for James Dougherty, named for him in San Francisco today. Because he did so much good work with underprivileged children. This is the man that is called an abuser and erased by Hollywood and by the fans. This man, whereas Joe DiMaggio abused his son from another marriage, and Arthur Miller was even worse. Arthur Miller would get remarried after Marilyn to another woman, and he had a son. This was in 1963, 1964. He had a son from that marriage who was born with Down syndrome, and Arthur immediately put his son in an institution and never visited him in his entire life.
Wow.
And that's the man that's Marilyn Monroe's great love, a woman that was dedicated to helping children, being an abused child herself. See, this is why the narrative is so offensive and so immoral. But that's the narrative. And my movie is the first time. Any movie you'll see, like there was that movie Blonde that came out a few years ago. If you remember, Netflix, was a very good movie. I thought again, the mythology was she's a pure victim that whole movie, right?
Yeah.
She has no power, right? And it was false. But if you notice that movie goes from her childhood, her childhood abuse in foster homes, and all the age 16, and then jumps to her being abused and casting couched in Hollywood at age 20. What's missing from the movie? The 4 years from Jim Dougherty. He doesn't even exist. He's not in the movie because he ruins the narrative. You see, this is the latest movie about her on Netflix, and they took him out. They took him out because he screws up the narrative. So 4 years just didn't happen. They just didn't happen, right? He doesn't exist because Hollywood can't allow this narrative to get out. And the fans, frankly, don't want it because they don't love her. They're not her friends. They want an icon that they can project themselves onto, right?
I mean, if she she wasn't abused by this man. Why are they creating this false narrative or
Well,
wanting
part of it
to?
is it's a modern sort of a feminist reimagining because you know it was an arranged marriage in the sense that they're her foster parents, his parents, they want you to get together. So that's oppressive. My parents were in an arranged marriage. They lasted 60 years, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's but this is a cultural narrative in the
yeah,
21st century where that must be oppressive and unloving. Number
yeah,
one, and number two is the idea that this woman who represents feminine empowerment in that narrative, sexual empowerment, independence, although she really never was independent, she was always relying on, unfortunately, very bad people for her Hollywood journey. She was never independent, but that's the narrative. The idea that she could have been happy in a marriage making cookies is a problem.
mm,
That lifestyle can't actually be something she might have enjoyed, even if she chose something else ultimately. The idea was she's trapped. She was horrific. She was claustrophobically trapped in something. This woman has never had any stability in her entire life. I think she did. Like, oh my God, I'm not, for once I can just have my own house that's mine. There's
yeah.
peace in my house. There's nobody abusing me in my house. I have some power in my domestic authority for the first time in my life. I don't think that was something that was oppressive to her. She might have later wanted more, but
Yeah.
I don't think it was something that she was unhappy in. But
And I know that there was that she really wanted kids too.
yeah,
That was something that she desperately wanted, want kids. And I know you're thinking, well, you want kids. There's got to be in a home where you're actually taking care of
yeah.
them.
I mean, neither Joe
Um,
DiMaggio nor Arthur Miller could have been good fathers. They already proven they weren't. They were bad people. They were bad
mm,
fathers. They were. I mean, that's just we know. They were bad fathers. Joe
mm,
DiMaggio's son died before him because he was an alcoholic because of the abuse from his father. Right? I mean, these are horrible human
mm,
beings, and
mm.
so he wouldn't have been good fathers. And the tragically, she waited till later in her life to try to get. Jim wanted to have a
Yes.
baby immediately, right? And
Yeah.
and probably, I think the odds were she would have had more likelihood of having children in a healthy way in her early 20s than she did in her 30s when she tried to have children. And by that
Yeah.
time, she was no longer able to in a healthy way, and all the pregnancies failed. So, these were
It's
choices she
heartbreaking.
made that, ultimately she made choices that satisfied one aspect of her personality
Mm,
and did not satisfy another aspect. And I would suggest many fans don't want that other aspect. They don't want the domestic woman. They'll say that. They'll say,
mhm.
she's so tragic, she never had any children. I'll say, well, she could have had children with Jim Dougherty, and their faces turn red with rage. Well, she can't have children with a normal guy. That would have been beneath her. See the
Oh,
narrative?
yeah,
This
that's
is
sad.
So,
it is
but yeah, so I'm going to start but I'm just going to transition by saying I wrote this script. My intention is to direct it. The reason this year is important and why God's grace I pray and intend to direct it this year. This is 2026. This is the
Mhm.
100th anniversary of Norma Jean's birth. So this would be a perfect time
Oh.
to tell the forgotten story of Norma Jean. That's why it's entitled Goodbye Norma Jean. The name Marilyn in my script maybe appears twice or three times because
Mhm.
that's a stage name, right? She actually kept her married name with Jimmy. She kept his married name for 7 years into her career. So when you're watching, when you're watching some of her most famous roles, her legal name that she's signing her contracts is still Norma Jean Dougherty, not Marilyn.
Ah.
When you're watching these things, like Gentlemen Prefer Blonde, she's still Norma Jean Dougherty, right?
Wow.
And by her choice, she could have changed her name.
Mhm.
She changed it when she was 30. She didn't change it until then, right? 10 years she kept that name. So in any event, I wrote the script. Maria and I have been friends for a long time. I've come onto her wonderful channel, which is going to talk
Ooh.
about Tea and Telly. And she is a huge Norma Jean / Marilyn fan. She feels a very deep connection to her. I gave her the script just as a friend. She
Uh-huh.
fell in love with it. I hope she did. I think that's what she told me, and she'll affirm or maybe deny that now. But what came out of it is that we started talking about, can we maybe make some, because Maria is a brilliant professional singer and
Mm,
composer,
mm,
producer, and so I said,
mhm.
maybe we can make some songs for this movie, maybe make a soundtrack for it. And that led us to where we are today. So thank you all for letting me talk. Thank you, Maria, for letting me talk so long. It's not fair to you. So I'm going to shut up now and hand it over to you because today's is all about the incredible work that you did with me.
Absolutely.
I'm just a small part of this. This is Cameron's thing, and that's why, he had every right to go with it. It's his big project and his thing. I'm just a small part, but honored to have been asked to be a part because, and I read the script and I did love it. I did love it a lot. And um, I'm not just only a fan because um, like Cameron said, there are kind of two types of Marilyn fans.
Mhm.
Those who sit there and stare at a picture and be like, "Oh my God, I'd love to be her. I'd love to look like her. She's gorgeous," and it's this outer surface that they're so appreciating. I see a lot of Marilyn, a lot of myself in her life, and um, even before Cameron had asked me to do and give me the songs to work with, I had already been writing a lot of songs that could have been even used in the movie because I experienced a lot of the pain and suffering. As a matter of fact, there's one I just did that I'll probably be releasing this month later,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very emotional one. Um, Talking about, it's called The Garden I Grew, and it's actually talking about not having ever had kids, but being okay with it, being strong with it, just because there's so many other women who had gone through that. So I think a lot of the songs I write are inspired by a lot of things that she went through, a lot of things I went through, and stuff like that. But and I tell you, before when Cameron was giving me these songs and he wrote these, I had an idea that he would ask me to throw in one myself, so I did one as well, um, and called The Other Shoe. And I was like, oh, hopefully he likes this. And I hope you did.
Well, I mean, it ended up being this magical thing. We're not going to play it today, but The Other Shoe is an incredible song because that referenced something that is very important psychologically for, in my opinion, what happened in that marriage, which is that you would think on one level that that a young woman that finally has stability after an entire life of chaos, right, would sink into that stability, right? And
Mhm.
what the evidence suggests is that it only made her more anxious, not because of anything Jim was doing wrong, but because everything he was doing was right. And she had no experience of that. She had no experience of good men that weren't there. Men didn't objectify her or touch her inappropriately or do use her as an object. Men that actually were supportive and did what they said they were going to do and were nice. She had no
Yeah.
experience. All of her in her foster homes, there's a lot of evidence of, let's just say, inappropriate stuff that happened in her foster homes with men. So she had no experience of good men in her life ever. And so now
Yeah.
living with a man who is strong, like he's a big muscular, Marine, right, and a boxer, yet who's gentle and supportive and isn't chaotic but stable, it creates this feeling for someone like that that like they're on, all they ever know is the roller coaster. And so it feels like to them, in their minds, they're at the top of the roller coaster and it's got to go down at some point. So they're in a constant state of anxiety. Something has to happen to ruin this, right? Because whenever they felt safe in any home, something bad would happen. So
Yes.
every day the gym was normal and good. And honey, let's just go watch a movie together. Honey, are you feeling bad? Oh, let me I mean, every day is like, well, then tomorrow something's going to go wrong. And
Yeah,
every
that
single day
tracks.
you're living in this constant other shoe to drop, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I personally
Yeah.
think is one of the psychological factors which made her go, yeah, I got to get out of this marriage. Not just because Fox was telling her to do it, but also it's like, I think she was in a constant state of anxiety that something was going to go wrong. And when nothing went wrong, she had to make it go wrong in
Yeah.
order to release that tension, right? Right?
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm,
believe
mm-hmm.
that. And so when Maria was telling me, I was like, well, that's exactly the theme that I want to explore. And The Other Shoe ends up being one of the most beautiful songs on our album. So
Oh wow.
Oh, thank you.
So you have
But
more there's not just one song, but how many songs that will be in the movie?
we've done at least 6, right? So far, at least 6, I
Oh
think. Right?
yeah, at
wow.
least 6.
We're still playing
There's
with the last one. We're trying to get the final ending right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
there's the boy that got away, the woman in the red sweater. You know, doing these is such a challenge because each mood is different, each setting is different, and I keep I keep thinking Cameron's gonna be like, so you went from this to this. It's like, yeah, because that's kind of the feel I had with that particular song. And I appreciate Cameron is allowing me to kind of go with, he's like, go with the how you feel in that one. And I say that because there are some songs that may sound a little bit jazzier, some songs
Mm.
that I actually fused Spanish and Arabic sound to
There's
it.
a flamenco. Some of them have a flamenco vibe that you're like, I
Ooh.
didn't see that in the lyrics, but it's perfect.
Oh.
Yeah, and so and then I think the next one that I have that we're working on now has more of a dressing room makeup-y 40s kind of vibe. So it just depends. I mean, because there were so many faces and so many feelings, I was like, what does this feel like? So it's been
Mm.
kind of nice to explore different things. And I tell you, I've had to, my voice is kind of going out a lot because I try different sounds in my voice as well, which oddly enough I get from doing my warm-ups with my voice therapist. We do a lot of work where we're kind of like going up and down, up and down, up and down, and that's what the song has a lot. And they're fun, I think. But when I read his lyrics, um, it's not just lyrics I'm looking at. It's what
Mm.
her feeling was, what she was feeling, what she was sensing, and sometimes it just comes together. Bombshell took me probably about, I don't know, like 50 different versions
Oh, you
before
did
I
it
got,
like within 48 hours, 50 different versions. I mean,
yeah.
the way this happened, the song we're going to talk about today is called Bombshell, and this will allow us to transition to that. But it's a song that I wrote in a songwriting class. I've been taking songwriting classes for about 6 years here in Los Angeles since before the pandemic, and
Oh wow.
and I'm taking at Songwriting School of Los Angeles, which is a wonderful school. There's like a lot of Grammy winners in there, and there's people come out of these and become professionals. And I come in there with the intention of adding songwriting to you had the long list of writer and novelist and showrunner and director, and now adding songwriter to it. But as everything in my career, things take time. And so I came in there saying it might take me a while. It took me 6 years to really feel confident in my craft just in that class. And so I wrote this song called Bombshell, which, symbolized the entire her sort of journey of her life, the entire journey, because the other songs were doing symbolized moments or aspects of it. This symbolized the whole journey, right? And I wrote it and I sent it to Maria because I knew she was in music, just as hey, look at this as a friend. That's all I did. I didn't ask her to do anything with it. I didn't expect her to do anything with it. 48 hours later, she sends me this MP3 with this song that you're going to hear. And I was like, what is this? What? She's like, well, I just felt inspired to work on it. So she just started singing it and producing it and creating the music. And 48 hours later, I had this incredible song, which I would then play to my songwriting class, and they were just flabbergasted. Their mouths dropped open. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. And it was so good. And look, I think all of our songs are good, but this was the signature song. It's the kind of song that you would play on the end credits of a movie, right? And
Yeah.
and it's a movie because it symbolizes everything, right? And it inspired me then to go, let's make an album. And that's what it was, really Maria's initiative that inspired this moment, because I wasn't thinking how could I even think of that? I'm not a singer myself. I'm a lyricist, right? I'm not even a musician. I don't currently have any musical training. You give me a sheet of music, I can't read it, right? Okay, but you don't have to be. I mean, in Rodgers and Hammerstein, Hammerstein was a lyricist. He didn't do any music, right? It was Rodgers that did it. Right? In the previous, and there's actually a wonderful movie called Blue Moon, which is about Rodgers' first partnership with Hart, where he wrote that song Blue Moon, and then he was eclipsed later by his next partnership with Hammerstein. But they were both lyricists. They didn't do music, and that's what I am. So I was like, I can't make a song.
I am too.
So you understand, Retro? You understand?
Yes, absolutely.
My mastery is words. I feel very comfortable with words, screenwriting, novels, movies, and songs. But I couldn't imagine doing an album because I don't have those skills, right? So I was like, it's just gonna be words. It can be a poem, but there's nothing more to that. Then Maria created this thing, and it just stunned me And then I even shared it with the producers of the film because by God's grace, we got some very high level producers to come on board Goodbye Norma Jean. And I shared it with them, and they were flabbergasted. They couldn't believe it. Right. And so so she says she did 50 versions of it. Again, I didn't ask her to do one version of it. And then we got the song, which is essentially the first draft of it. And it worked so perfectly that we decided to put it out as a single. And it's out now. Hopefully we'll be able to put in some links for our viewers who are watching. People on Spotify, Apple Music, others. And Marie, you can talk about it. We put it out about 2 weeks ago, and people are buying it. People are buying the song.
As last I checked, they were using it in the background of their videos. It tells me like all the details. So people have been saving it, downloading it, replaying it. It even tells you when they have it on loop. And so it's telling me that people are looping it and watching
it's a loopable
it.
song. I played it on loop. It just you can't get it out of your head. You've heard it. You can't get it out of your head once you get into it, right? And
I've had people say to me, I've been repeating it and stuff like that. And so it's starting to do well. I didn't promote it. I wanted to see how it would do without a promotion first. And it's already doing well without the promotion. So
which is rare. I mean, normally you have to give some kind of discount to put it out for free or whatever. But and again, partly I think Maria also designed a beautiful AI design of herself with a ghost of Norma Jean in there, and so any Marilyn fan can immediately see the picture and say, "Oh, that's Marilyn Monroe. What's this song about?" and click it, right, which is very smart.
Awesome.
I took one of her pictures and I put myself with her, and she's like in a ghost version, and we're both looking at each other. And so I thought that would be nice and eye-catching with the colors and everything like that. And I'm on 35 platforms. So if they type in Maria Shinzai, they can go up under see all my songs, but the Bombshell one will be there. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, you name it. It's on 35 different platforms right now.
Okay. And so if I play it today, I won't get into any copyright issues. I'll be fine.
Oh, you have our permission. We're the copyright owners.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
You have our permission.
And
we encourage people who want to hear it clear and not over a YouTube replay to actually buy the song.
Yes, actually buy the song. Yes.
Because it is something I think you want to loop. And what I'd love to do now is to maybe transition that. I would actually love to just read the original lyrics that I wrote, so you get the story and the context of it. And then you'll see, because everyone hearing this might be like, "Oh, I have an idea how that would sound." And then you're going to hear what Maria did, which is not what I expected it to sound like, and
I love
yet
that.
It's perfection, right? And that's where true art comes from. Where I did my part of this. That's what, as a director, that's what I look for. I was like, okay, what is the actor? What is the music person? What is the sound person? What is the grip bringing to the table that I didn't think of, right? And here's a perfect example of someone who took something that I started with and then took the baton to another planet, right?
Yes.
So I'm just going to read the lyrics, and then if there's a way for you to play the song, we can do that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, we'll do that.
And my record label should be okay with this. So.
Okay.
Okay. If not, then we'll figure it out.
No, they're okay.
Yeah.
No, they're okay.
Okay.
Well, this is actually a perfect photo, the one you have right now, for it, because it captures. This was a photo. I know the history of this photo. This was taken at a party in New York City. I think either she was already married to Arthur Miller, or she was in between DiMaggio and Miller at the time. But this was a candid shot that was taken when she didn't realize she was being photographed. Right.
Yes.
So, when she was photographed, she was just magnificent, right?
Yeah.
The camera loved her, and this was taken, and this is her true self. This is Norma Jean.
This is the truth. Yeah.
That's
what I love about this picture is that
she's at a party where she's the center of attention, and for a moment, no one's looking at her. And the cameraman and the photographer took this, and you see the loneliness, you see the sadness, you see the lost girl that was Norma Jean beneath the created, manufactured Marilyn. And this is the song is for this woman that Jimmy knew. Jimmy said this. He said that if you look at any of her photos from after she left me and became famous, if you look at any of her photos, he said all you have to do is you have to just cover. He would do this. He would go to magazine stands and do this. He would cover the mouth just to see how she was feeling, and you could see in her eyes she was sad. Even in her smiling, most magnetic photos. If you just cover the mouth and the smile, the eyes tell the truth, and here the whole body told the truth. Which is the lesson of Bombshell. So with that said, I'm going to read this in honor of Norma Jean. Bombshell. In the dark of the night, When you think you're at peace, the devil's out of sight. Your soul is on its leash. Then there's a flash of light and a thunderous roar. You almost lose your sight when I walk through the door. Platinum blonde in fur, smile and wink, cast a spell. The world becomes a blur. Here she comes, the bombshell. I turn the sky to flame, brighter than a rocket. Burn away my old name, hearts all in my pocket. Norma Jean, well, she's dead. Don't ask about her, please. Marilyn with lips red, blows a kiss to tease. Platinum blonde in fur, smile and wink, cast a spell. The world becomes a blur. Here she comes, the bombshell. A goddess on display, the sum of all my fears. Men using me for play, sparkling eyes hide my tears. Always a role to play, my body sold for rent. Raging as I sing, happy birthday, Mr. President. Platinum blonde in fur, smile and wink, cast a spell. The world becomes a blur. Here she comes, the bombshell. I wanted the world's love, but not in this way. My soul screams from above, Jimmy, take me away. Mistook our home for bars because you were my first. Lost myself in the stars, then fell in flames to earth. Platinum blonde in fur, smile and wink, cast a spell. The world becomes a blur, fade out for the bombshell. So, and those lyrics came to me, that's first draft. Those lyrics just came out of me. I wrote that within an hour, right? That's the magic of the song. And, you know, it just happened so rapidly because I felt, as I felt when I wrote the script, as I felt when Maria and I started talking, I do believe there's a mystical thing where, you know, her spirit is guiding this project because I believe it. I've had too many strange experiences over several years to not believe that. I've had too many. And this was one of them. And this song is meant to be sort of the review of her life, looking back in her sort of final days. And, you know, she could never say these words aloud. And, you know, the official narrative she gave in interviews was, you know, Jimmy and I was just an arranged marriage. You know, he was a nice guy, but I never loved him, you know, and I wish him well. That's the official narrative she gave to press. And I don't believe that to be true in the slightest. I believe that's what the PR people of Hollywood said, because he doesn't serve her image. He's a problem. And so one thing, again, I want to use that to transition into how Maria sang the song. When I spoke, I wanted to mention that I spoke at her memorial, at her annual memorial, and a gentleman came up to me from the audience. And this is near her grave in Westwood, right, at the cemetery. And a gentleman came up to me and he said, well, my father was a journalist and he interviewed Marilyn Monroe in 1962, just before she died. He was one of the last people to interview her. And he said, my father told me this, and he always remembered when he came to meet her for the interview, she laid out the ground rules for the interview. She said, I'm happy to talk about my relationship, my failed marriages, my relationship with Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller, who she divorced by then. I'm happy to talk about those. No problem. I will not answer one question about Jimmy Dougherty. Don't ask me. And that says something. When she won't talk about it, there's something deep there still. In 1962, it's very private. And part of it is also, you know, he, after many years of enduring her statements in the press that she never loved him, he finally, in 1953, at the height of her fame, he finally did an interview with Photoplay magazine, which I have the original magazine. We did a lengthy interview where he finally told his side of the marriage, and he told their relationship, and that he's like, and you can feel the hurt and pain still in his voice, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, he's like, you know, because he said, he starts off the interview saying, you know, she has told the world, but he's been silent for all this time while she's becoming world famous. She said she's told the world that she was never happy with me. I wonder if she's forgotten how much we were in love. That's the opening of the interview, right? And that pain stayed with him his entire life because he never found the answer to whether she ever loved him, right? But I believe that answer, that's one of many examples, is where she wouldn't talk about him to the press after that interview, because after that interview, she never talked about him again. She talked about him before, but in this dismissive way. After the 1953 interview where he said that we really were in love, and he laid out all these things that later historians confirmed everything he said. He didn't lie one word. Unlike many people who had lied about her, including Arthur Miller, who wrote this horrific, ugly play after she died called After the Fall, where he portrayed her as a sex addict and, you know, an abusive wife. And it's horrible. I mean, he profited on her after her death. I mean, he was a garbage man, right? He just told the truth, and historians would later confirm everything he said in the interview. But after that, she became completely silent. She wouldn't talk about him again, because then the truth of the relationship was out there, and how could she deny it, right? And the fact that in 62, even then it was raw for her, it says something to me. And I think that's the energy of this song, is that regret, that line, Jimmy, take me away. I believe in my heart, and people will say you have no evidence of that, and they are right. I have only circumstantial and inferential evidence that she still cared for him and regretted that he wasn't in her life. I believe that. It's only circumstantial evidence. Everyone will say that's not true. She never said it. But I believe in my heart that her soul screamed it, and she had no one to tell it to, because no one wanted to hear it. No one wanted to hear it. And so this song is meant to honor that feeling in 1962, where she can't even talk about it. She can't even talk about it because it's too painful. Right. So with that, I'd love to transition to Maria, talk about a little bit how you did this song, and then we can maybe play it for everyone. And I think that might be a good way to close out our video today.
Yeah, this like what Kamran was saying about how this how the lyrics came to him. Although I know I did 50 different versions of it, it was more that the sound in my voice even had to be perfect, because I have a lower voice and it sounds a little bit better with a little bit higher, so forth and so forth. But anyway, it kind of just came together as well after a while. But I tell you, I kind of walked away from it for a little bit and thought I found the version. I thought, oh, okay, this is it. And then something said, no, it's not it. You got to go back and do it again. And remember, he hasn't even asked me to. It just was something that I just did. Why? I don't know. It was just compelled. Just do it, because it needs I'm with a music person, everything, if you hear my songs, they're all almost very emotional. I'm an emotional person, and this is how I express myself through music. And I cry at my own songs, for crying out loud. I'm that emotional. I'm like, that's beautiful. But so in a sense, it was like I wanted it to be heard in not just a poetic sense, because music is such a big part of everybody's life. It affects people anywhere. You can hear a song and be like, I know where I was, who I was with, and everything. It just triggers emotion and memory, and I needed that in the song. So I'm excited for you to hear it. So
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna.
So this is the world premiere of Bombshell on
premiere.
YouTube on Retro Nerd Girl.
The devil's out of sight. Your soul is on its leash. Then there's a flash of light and a thunderous roar. You almost lose your sight when I walk through the door. Platinum blonde and far, smiling wing, cast a spell. The world becomes a blur. Here she comes, the bombshell. in this way. My soul screams from above, Jimmy, take me away. You're stuck at home for bars because you were my first. Lost myself in the stars, then fell in flames to earth. Platinum blonde and fur, smile and wink, cast a spell. The world becomes a blur, fade out for the
You can't imagine my reaction when I heard that for the first time. She just sent me this MP3 file. I was like, what? And you know, it is just it's, you know, I'm proud of my lyrics.
Yeah.
What Maria did was just a whole another.
Oh, yes. I mean, just it is really, really gorgeous singing.
Thank-
Absolutely.
It
And the
was into it.
style.
I have to tell you, it's actually trained my voice to do so many other things um because that style requires so much control and just I don't know. It was funny because some of it came from when I was doing my exercises. I'm constantly going ooh, and just like practicing going up and down.
Mhm.
And but this one, Cameron, it was emotional. I think that's where a lot of the push came from, was the emotion, because the lyrics
Mhm.
were so. I was honored to do it.
And you can feel that, you
Mhm.
know, in the way you're executing, you know, these lyrics. It's just really incredible. I love the style. I love that like century kind of.
Yeah, it feels very
Uh,
1940s, jazzy,
yes,
and other elements, right? You know, it
yes,
feels like
bluesy.
exactly all
I
those
told
elements. You can't put your finger on exactly, but it's the kind of music she would have been listening to when she was going to clubs with Jimmy.
And
Yes,
you know what's funny
yes.
is I told Cameron, I said, can you tell at the beginning of the song, I made it sound like her walking in heels
Mm.
with the clicking of
Yeah.
the music. It was almost like you could imagine her walking through that door. So
Yes.
some of the things I put in there are not just music sound, but they're actually, you can almost hear her movement through it. So if you
Mhm.
play the beginning, like if you play it like just real quick, you can hear the clicking sounds like her heels walking.
By
So
the way,
Oh,
these photos,
yeah.
that you're showing right now are the last
Yes.
photos that were taken of her
Yes.
before she passed on Santa Monica Beach, right?
Mhm.
In which Maria knows that's right outside my window. I mean,
mhm.
I
Oh,
live
wow.
on the bluff above Santa Monica Beach, right above where she took these photos,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And one of the many strange synchronicities, you know, that happened, one of the
Mhm.
many ones, was as
Mhm.
I was writing the script, you know, and you know, you research the rumors, which I think are true, though many historians still deny them, that she had, you know, this affair with the Kennedy brothers, right? I do believe that's true, and you know, she met them, both of them, JFK and RFK, through their brother-in-law Peter Lawford, who was part of Frank
Mhm.
Sinatra's Rat Pack, you know, and he was an actor.
Oh.
He was there. He was married one of the Kennedy sisters, right? And so he had met her. He met her, and then he introduced her to the Kennedys. And legend has it that she would meet for her tryst with President Kennedy, and then later with Robert Kennedy, you know, in Lawford's mansion, which was on Santa Monica Beach. And I was reading the biography as I was writing the script. I froze because the biography was talking about, oh, well, Peter Lawford, here's the address of the mansion. I was like, no, that can't be right, because that's literally facing me. I've been living above his mansion, directly above the Lawford mansion for the last 12 years. I'm at the bluff, and right below me is the place where she would have supposedly meet with the Kennedys. So there's strange synchronicities, right? I mean, so
Oh, wow.
Maria knew how to do those
It's
synchronicities.
the hair on your arm like kind of raise up a little
I
bit.
have more than that, but we don't have time for all of those. But Maria knows because she's already experienced that there is something supernatural happening in this entire project, including with this song. And she felt those, like she instinctively felt like the clicking of the heels. People can mock this and say it's all silliness, but I absolutely believe that this was inspired by her spirit from the other side. I like is what Maria is describing of feeling compelled. I understand that because the script was written. I felt compelled to write it. I would wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and jump out of bed without explanation and run to my computer and write a scene. And I didn't know why I was doing it. It was a compulsion. And then the next day, as I'm reading these biographies, I'm writing and reading at the same time, I would come across the historical event that I had narrated in the scene before that I'd made up at 3 a.m. and discover that the dialogue as I wrote it is how history recorded the event.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's literally, I didn't know the dialogue. I mean, this is what people said, she said, he said, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know that, and I wrote it, right? And so Maria understands the compulsion. So that's why you're not going to make this movie, or it's going to take years. I don't know. I think God willing, I'm going to make the movie this year. Wow. I don't know how. I have no idea how. I don't know how. But I'm like, I'm not running this boat here. She is. I'm not the driver here. Okay. And I think Maria, you understand that you ain't the driver of this thing.
No, it wasn't. If you hear my other songs and then you hear this, you'll be like, where did that come from? Because my songs are different. I remember walking with one of these other songs that I did. I remember walking away from it for a bit. I came back and then all of a sudden there's like a different version of words, and I'm like, how'd that happen? Because I didn't do
she
that.
sang something and then she heard it. That's not what I sang, but that's what's on the record.
Yeah, that's what's on the record.
And I believe that.
So,
I believe that. I 100% know she's not like crazy artist making. I know she sang a version of it, and Norma was like, "Yeah, no, I don't want it that way. I want to change the lyric here." I know
Cameron, yeah, just to let you know, the lyric kind of changed a little bit here, and he's like, "Okay."
Because I sang the lyric on your page, but she made me change it. It's actually, and I believe, and I know why. So one of the lyrics I had was called "An Orphan Girl," and you sang in that other song, "Lonely Girl." And when she told me that. It's Norma Jean was very insistent, and it's in my script. It's in my script where she said, "I'm not an orphan. I have a mother. I have a father. I'm just been thrown into this orphanage." But she would insist that even as a child, I'm not an orphan. So she wouldn't want that in the song. And so when you sang it, she's like, "Nope, I'm not an orphan," and she changed it.
Wow, that's wild.
Didn't work. It just changed it. I'm like, okay.
I didn't say that, but okay, I'm going with it. It's so there's a lot of magic. This woman was a magical woman. She's an archetypal figure. I think that this project, my hope for this project is that we enter the next century of Norma Jean, Marilyn Monroe, the next century in a new way, because the first century was about her myth, right? And that doesn't serve people. The second century, I think, should be about Norma Jean and her truth, and then you can learn from all of it. You can admire all of her successes and her glamour, because she earned it. I mean, she learned how to pose like this incredible photo. She had to learn how to do that. She became the greatest model of her time. She learned it. She learned how to create Marilyn Monroe as a character. That's an act of mastery of body, and she did that, right? You can admire all of that, and you should admire all that. But you can also, but now it's time to reclaim Norma Jean and the good person she was before Hollywood told her she couldn't be a good person. And if we deny Norma Jean, we deny her. And I think the next century has to be Norma Jean's century. And part of that is next century has to be Jim's century, because he was the only one in her entire life that loved Norma Jean and didn't know Marilyn Monroe and loved her anyway. As I said at the memorial, would people still love her had she not become Marilyn Monroe? Jim did. He didn't need her to change her hair, to get a chin job. He didn't need her to change her voice. Her voice was changed. She manipulated her voice to sound
Yes.
sexy and sensual. That's not her natural
Hmm.
voice. Jimmy heard it
Yeah.
on the phone. He's like, "What's happening to your voice?" He's like, "Oh, the studio's telling me I have to talk like this, right?" Like they created 24 hours a day, had to create a false voice to fit an image. And
Yeah.
so he loved her without having to be any of these things. She was good enough. And it's wonderful that she did all these things, but she's good enough the way she was. And that's the
Yeah.
message. And I hope that's the message within Bombshell. And I think Maria's incredible voice and production captured it, that she was good enough the way she was, you know,
Yeah.
and the next century should be the love of Norma Jean and Jim. And
Yeah.
that's what I hope to do with this project.
Yeah. And you brought up something really interesting, because I think the idea of fandom and, of people really loving icons can be clouded in an actual, like an almost twisted way, to want to always see those people as those icons, but not realize there's another side. One thing I always noticed about Marilyn, and maybe some of her fans may have noticed it too, is that yes, we recognize the voice wasn't a real, like a actual real person's voice, and we were fascinated that somebody would change their voice or make their voice sound like that. And I think that's part of the fascination with her, is that we know that at some point this is not a real person, that she's portraying, but it's bigger than life.
Yeah.
It's
archetypal.
Yeah, it is part of this bigger than life icon image. And to be a real person and have to present that, as we're kind of discovering more that we talk to each other over social media, is difficult and hard.
And 24
So,
hours a day with
yes, yeah,
nobody interested in the other side of you. You
yeah,
can't
yeah,
ever come home and take off the makeup. You can't.
yeah, yeah,
Like even doing even doing the song, like I had to change my voice, my accent, the way I said it, the way I pronounced it. And it was done deliberately to show that, like, almost mimicking the fact that she had to change her voice to to be this bombshell,
Ah,
you know. So
yes.
yeah, it was, sorry, my voice.
But this is
Oh
that's the
no,
example. Imagine look at what it did to your voice. Imagine having to
Yeah.
portray another voice 24 hours a day for
Mhm.
16 years. And
yes.
everyone's saying the moment you let the facade down, the moment Joe DiMaggio
The
sees
magic's
Norma
gone.
Jean,
Yeah.
he's not interested in Norma Jean. The
Yeah,
moment
the
Arthur Miller
magic's
sees
gone.
Norma Jean, he's not interested. Bring back Marilyn. I don't want this, right?
Yeah.
And one of the last thing, remember, and maybe we can end on this. Remember, I talked about the opening thing that Jimmy Dougherty said in that interview in 1953 was, has she forgotten how much we were in love, right? And the ending thing is so profound. He said this in 53 at the height of her fame. At the who wants to marry a millionaire, all these things, at the height of her fame. And 9 years before she passed, he wrote, "My fear for her is that she's going to end up alone. She's going to end up lonely," right?
Yes.
Which is what happened, right? She even did some beautiful artwork, which she titled Lonely. She actually made works of art that have sold for millions of dollars, paintings that she titled Lonely, because that was her inner experience. And you know what loneliness is? What loneliness is, because you can be in solitude and not be lonely.
Mhm.
Oh
Right?
yes.
There's a difference.
Oh
right?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. You can be in a relationship and be lonely. What loneliness is that you feel that nobody sees you for who you are.
Yes.
Nobody loves you for who you are, right? If you are in solitude, but you feel secure that you are loved as you are, you're not alone, right? And this tragic woman that had hundreds of millions of fans, right?
Yeah.
Nobody loved her except for Jimmy.
Yeah.
And that's why this movie and this song have to get out there, so that we can all start loving her. If we can start loving her, which is all of her, which is the Marilyn character she created and the Norma Jean soul that's hiding in the eyes.
Yes.
We can love her. She won't be lonely anymore. Right now,
And
a billion people don't love her. They don't love her. They love an image. Let's love her now.
And it's amazing that she still wants to be heard. And a lot of that is, Cameron showed me something that blew my mind. But when I was writing the song,
Mhm.
I think it was the other shoe, and I handwrite. I still do
Oh,
handwriting.
Yes, yes.
So I handwrite it, and it was just spilling out the words and everything. And I snapped a picture of it, and I said,
of her like
"Here,"
scrawls. There's like this complicated scrawls that were very impassioned.
because if you see my writing, it's all like cursive and perfect, and because I'm
Which
Virgo
is
and
her normal
Capricorn.
Marilyn writing. It's beautiful
Yeah,
penmanship, right? Okay.
yeah.
Hmm.
But then I'm writing this song, and then he says to me, "I'm going to show you something." I said, because I told him that's not my writing, really. And he goes, "No, it's not." And I'm like, "What do you, no, I know, but what do you mean by that?" And he goes, and then he showed me the picture of Marilyn's handwriting normal and when she was not, when she was in Maryland. And they were identical almost. I was
Like
like,
Oh,
the same
wow.
frenzied, scribble scrabble was her. Was that she had? If you look at the photo, it's her handwriting. It's
Wow.
her handwriting.
it
Yeah.
looks almost identical. I sat there and stared at it forever. I was like, what?
You guys are gonna have to make a movie
Yeah.
about the
This is going to be
movie.
all in the.
You're
This
gonna
is going
make
to
a
be like a
movie.
documentary of the making of, right? But there's no end to this. There's so many such stories, and we don't have time for all of them. And hopefully, as the movie
Yeah.
progresses, I want to come back on this channel with Maria, and we'll talk
Yes.
about it because
Oh, absolutely.
strange things have happened since the very beginning. The
Mm.
moment this and since we're talking about songs, the moment this movie came into being, I was
Mhm,
thinking
mhm.
of doing it, writing it 2 years ago, and I was driving, and I told myself, who am I to write this random Pakistani guy? I mean, nobody's going to want this movie for me. No one's going to want me to direct it. It's never going to happen. And so I said, I'm not going to do it. And my car stopped because the traffic stopped and I'm waiting in traffic. And I turn on my radio as I'm thinking this, I'm not going to do this movie. I'm not going to write it. And what comes on when I turn on my radio instantly comes on. This isn't the whole story. Instantly comes on is the song that would is Elton John's song "Candle in the Wind." It instantly comes on.
Shot
So
up.
I'm like, oh, okay, that's a sign. Wow, that's a sign. But that
Candle in the
wasn't.
wind?
Yeah,
No.
no, the sign gets worse. It gets more extreme. So I'm like, oh wow, that's a sign for me. I was telling myself I'm not going to write this movie. Who am I to write this
Wow.
movie? I'm not going to do it. And I turn on my radio, and "Candle in the Wind" instantly starts right on
Yeah.
on radio, right? And I'm like, oh, that's a sign. But that wasn't the sign. I froze because remember, my car is parked in traffic, stuck in traffic and sitting. And I freeze. I realize where I am. I'm on Wilshire Boulevard in Westwood. I'm right opposite her grave. I'm sitting in my car opposite her grave where she's buried in Wilshire and Westwood on Glendon, right? I'm exactly positioned opposite her grave. Exactly. Not 5 feet away. Like my car is here, and across the street behind that building is her grave, exactly where I'm sitting. And the song is playing. And then I knew I had to write the song. To write the movie and this song. I knew I had to do it. She's like, no, you're gonna do this. You random Pakistani guy who's living where I used to hook up with Kennedy, you're gonna do this for me. And you don't have a choice in the matter. And she did the
Oh,
same
wow.
thing. You don't have a choice. When she takes over, you don't have a choice. The funny thing is, in her afterlife, she has more power than this poor woman had in her real life. In her real life, the system took away all her power to create the image. Now in her afterlife, she's getting revenge. Now she's like, I'm not listening to nobody. Nobody can tell me what I can do now.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
We've got a ghost story for you with all of songs.
I've got many more, and Maria will have many more.
But yeah,
It's really
Yeah.
that is wild.
Especially when it comes to the other songs too. And I can't wait for them, and we'll be getting those out slowly as well.
Yeah, we're gonna put them
Because
out, put
they're
an album
ready.
together. I mean, this is an unusual thing where the album is coming out before the movie, but she Norma Jean, and forgive me, I'm always calling her Norma Jean. Others call her Marilyn, that's fine. For me, she's always Norma Jean. So Norma Jean, she never played by the rules anyway, for good and bad, but she never played by the rules. So she's like, song before the album before the movie, I don't care.
Well, yeah, I mean, however it works also too, when the inspiration hits and the lightning bolts come, you gotta go with it, so this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for being on this channel and talking about your stories. Kamran, for the movie that you're writing, the lyrics, and Maria for this amazing song. I know everyone who is on my channel, we're probably going to be heading over to the links that I'm going to provide in the description with your YouTube channel and the song itself. We're going to put that and any other new information that we can. And that's pretty much it. Just to also, if you need to reach Kamran, you can also reach Kamran in the link below. It
Yeah,
will
the
be a
Patreon below.
Patreon. Yeah,
Maria's
Patreon.
got her lovely channel. If you want to pitch the channel, Maria.
Yeah, so yeah, her channel. And then also YouTube is going to suggest a video for you to watch. Please do watch that to support the channel. We're gonna see you in a future video. Take care, everybody.
God bless everyone.
Thank you.